It has been a minute since my last Tactics Ogre Reborn video, hasn't it? But that doesn't mean there's been a lack of news. In fact, there's been a ton of new information coming out via Yasumi Matsuno on Twitter, as well as more interviews and articles that have been published about the game, informative pieces by Square Enix, etc., etc. They've been posted piecemeal since the official reveal of the game, and I've been waiting until there was enough collective info to warrant a video. And today is that day. First, we'll be going over the specific info that we have new, returning, updated, etc. Then I'll give my thoughts. Timestamp for those thoughts on screen now and in the description. Hello everyone, my name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. If you're just tuning into my Tactics Ogre Reborn coverage and want more in-depth info regarding what we've learned prior to this video, you can find a playlist link with all of my previous videos in the description box below. As a short and sweet recap, here's the major strokes. Tactics Ogre Reborn is a remake of Tactics Ogre Let Us Cling Together, a Super Nintendo title that codified many of the staple features of turn-based strategy RPGs as we know them today. Receiving an updated re-release in 2011 on the Sony PSP, that makes Reborn the third release of this iconic title. To stand apart from its previous versions, Square Enix has given the game a fully reorchestrated soundtrack, full voice acting, completely overhauled graphics, and a suite of balance changes, mechanical updates, and modifications. Those mechanical changes have been the focus of the discussion for the last few months or so, and it's what we'll largely be focusing on today, with a couple of exceptions at the end. First and foremost, equipment. In the 2011 PSP release of Let Us Cling Together, what equipment a character could wield and effectively utilize was determined in part by that character's level and what skills they did or did not have equipped. For example, a short sword could be equipped by a character of any level, but the statistically superior Gladius couldn't until a character reached level 3. On top of this, the specific skill for one-handed swords was required to do maximum damage and enable powerful finishing moves. In Reborn, level requirements have been removed, so when you find a cool new sword in a shop or on the battlefield, you'll be able to equip it on your knight or whoever else, no waiting required. The amount of skills you can equip on a given unit has also been reduced massively from 10 to 4. So we don't have direct confirmation of what skills are still available at this time. I'd hazard a guess that specific weapon skills have been removed. Speaking of skills, the way in which you acquire skills has also been revamped. Previously, you would acquire points you could spend to learn new skills or upgrade old ones, allowing you to customize a given character in a variety of ways. You were limited in some capacity based on the class of the unit in question, but there was a lot of flexibility in customization as a result. Now, it sounds that things have been simplified. According to Square, units will now gain skills as they level, as opposed to skills being individually purchased by the player. Due to the new 4 skills per unit limit, I imagine build customization will now stem from what skills you choose to equip to make a very focused, narrow character. To accommodate this, Square has apparently created entirely new skills for many classes, as well as retuned existing skills to better fit into this new system. I imagine we will also be able to retain skills between classes that a character has leveled up to mix and match, but we don't yet have confirmation of that as far as I am aware. I'm hoping we do, but we just don't know at this point. One thing we do have confirmation of is the new pincer attack skill, wherein attacking an enemy while you have another unit flanking said enemy will cause the flanking unit to perform a free follow-up attack. For those of you who've played Triangle Strategy, this will be a very familiar mechanic, although it sounds more like this will be a skill that requires specific equipping and choice in Tactics Ogre, as opposed to an inherent mechanic for all characters, as it is in Triangle Strategy. With these updates to skills, there has also been a rebalancing of some of the more lackluster abilities in the game. In particular, Square has called out ninjutsu and war dances, the abilities of ninjas and sword masters respectively, stating that they have changed the cost to use these abilities. Whereas they used to require TP, a resource acquired over the course of battle by dealing and receiving damage, as well as specific items like fans or poisons, depending on what the ability was, they now have a flat MP cost like any other spell. This change was apparently made for ease of use, and to make these abilities more appealing alongside their more conventional magical cousins. This change to MP-only costs was also made for finishing moves, a major feature of the PSP release that will now function more as special abilities in your roster as opposed to end-of-battle executions. Moving on, we've also learned a lot more about the items called charms, since I covered them after Mr. Matsuno revealed them. At first, it seemed charms would just be used as a bonus experience system, but now we've seen the charms can provide set XP, full levels, permanent stat increases, and the ability to change a character's elemental status. This appears to be an evolution of the tarot system from previous releases, where enemies could drop tarot cards on death that would provide permanent stat increases or decreases on pickup. Now, rather than slowly and arduously grinding out RNG card drops and also going out of your way to acquire them with the right units in the middle of battle, you'll just be able to apply these changes when and to whomever you want. Charms will be able to be found in battle as loot drops from enemies, and also as post-battle rewards. For those of you who've played Let Us Cling Together, the 2011 PSP release, this strikes very similar to being able to find coins that you could then sell for money, both as post-battle rewards or from item drops from enemies. For my tarot enjoyers out there, though, worry not. These in-battle cards do still exist in the form of buff cards, quote unquote. How and when these cards will appear has not yet been made clear, but much like tarot cards, they will be able to be taken by both you and the enemy, and the buffs they provide will last on you and the enemy until the end of the battle. A unit will be able to hold the effects of up to 4 different cards at once, and acquiring multiple cards of the same type will cause their effects to stack. This could potentially lead to some truly monstrous plays near the end of a battle, so I'm curious to see just how big of a boost these stacked effects can provide. Like, if you get +5 attack cards on someone, how much damage are they really going to do with that next basic attack, you know? I'm very excited to see that. Buff cards aren't the only changes coming to the field of battle. Now, we finally have the ability to investigate the battlefield before we commit a party to the fight. This function has come in the form of the Scout command and will be accessible from the battle preparation screen, and will give you insight into the terrain, the number of enemies, and the classes that you'll be facing. You'll be able to change classes and equipment of your party in the battle prep screen as well, allowing you to be fully prepared without extra saving, loading, and menu navigation. This is a change that I hope comes to the inevitable Final Fantasy Tactics remake as well, as it's just one of those modernizations that makes life easier, and one of the things that people call out as very annoying when they go back and play these old classics for the first time in the modern day. We will also apparently be able to make and save up to 5 battle parties that you can swap between prior to battle. This sounds like it's going to be another very convenient feature that I hope to see emulated in future strategy titles as well. It'll be particularly useful considering the next change, bonus objectives. Bonus objectives will add some variety between missions, rewarding the player for fulfilling certain conditions such as, quote, win the battle with an archer in the party, or perform an attack that hits multiple tiles, unquote. If you complete these objectives, you can find bonus XP, charms, or even equipment, so it seems highly advisable that you try to do them whenever and wherever you can. Next, we've received some extra insight into the improved AI that Square has been talking about recently. Now, the AI will be able to recognize the difference between narrow checkpoints versus wide open battlefields, and will better be able to react to the player's movements. It will seek out buff cards and seek to deny them to the player, all of which promises to make the already challenging battles of Tactics Ogre that little extra spicy, which is something I always appreciate. Speaking of things we appreciate, for those who appreciate a good auto-battler, Tactics Ogre Reborn has you covered there as well. The improvement to AI has also been applied to allied units, and the player can choose between 4 AI presets for their units if you want to sit back and watch the magic unfold. Those presets are Fierce Attacker, Stalwart Defender, Distant Striker, and Ardent Mender. I feel like those are pretty self-explanatory names. I mean, just puzzle it through for a second if you aren't sure what they do. Finally, we wrap up the battle mechanics discussion with some more minor changes, which are as follows. The trajectory skill has been added as an innate skill that can be toggled on and off, allowing all units with ranged attacks and magic to see the path their attacks will take before you launch them. Revived units will now immediately take their turn after getting back up, ensuring that you have the chance to heal them or move them out of danger, or otherwise take actions to ensure that they don't die again immediately. Random encounters have been removed, being replaced by training battles that you can engage in select locations. Your units cannot die in training battles, meaning they will be an ideal place to grind up new characters and classes. General balance changes have occurred across the board, which makes sense, given the change to stats and classes that we've seen. And I've mentioned this in a previous video, but a party level has been added, setting a max level for your party that cannot be surpassed, and which gradually increases to prevent overleveling and thus trivializing the game's content. However, the party level is slightly higher than the level of enemies, so some grinding can still be done to ease your path forward. And last but not least, for the mechanical changes, the Rogue class has been removed from player use and is now enemy only. But there's a couple other things to go over before we get into my thoughts. First, the shop interface has apparently been completely overhauled. Square hasn't given us many details in regards to how exactly, but they did state that the changes will make buying and selling all types of gear, as well as recruiting new units, far simpler. There's also an auto restock mechanic that you can utilize for your most frequently used consumables, so you will never run out of the materials you need. Finally, and personally speaking, they really buried the lead on this one, the crafting system revamp that was so sorely needed that I've called out multiple times in my coverage as my most requested change is happening. Now, all crafting has a 100% success rate, and you can choose to craft multiple of the same item at the same time. Thank the Lord! Gone are the days of crafting one stupid material at a time when you need like 8 total for an item, and each item only has a certain chance to succeed, and if it failed, you had to reload, and God forbid you forgot to take 2 minutes between each item to leave the shop and enter the saves and save, because now you gotta do 2 items if the one failed, and just... God, I'm so happy. This is such an important change, man. Holy crap, this needed to happen so bad. Sorry. I know I said I'd save the thoughts until after the info dump, but just... this is such an important change. I cannot believe it took them this long to go over it. Oy, oy, oy. Okay. And that's all of the information. I know that was a lot, so I'm going to try to keep my thoughts brief. We'll start at the top. Unscripted. These are my thoughts. So, equipment changes. Having the ability to just equip a piece of gear on a character, so long as it's a piece of gear that can be equipped by that character's class as soon as you get it, regardless of their level. This is just a nice change. Obviously, we don't really know yet how class levels and stats versus item stats will play into your overall strength. But that was such a painful aspect of trying to level a new class just across the board in the PSP release, because like you would get Terror Knights, for example, one of my favorite classes, and they were level 1 for everybody, and you could only equip level 1 gear. So not only did you have a level 1 character, or as many characters that you wanted to make Terror Knights are now level 1, but they can also only equip the worst gear in the game, just cementing the fact that they would be useless for 5, 10, 15, 20 levels. Now, hopefully, when you're taking the time to level up a new class on a character, especially since class levels are specific to characters now rather than being party-wide, being able to equip them with the best gear that you've got available will make them marginally more useful than completely useless as they were before. So I think this is a good change. It was interesting being able to see a new item in the shop that you didn't have a character that was a high enough level for, and anticipating the day when you'd be able to use that. That was fun, but it was also very painful. And especially if you would find a piece of gear on the battlefield and you'd be super excited. And again, I'm not going to be able to use this for 3, 4, 5 levels. So I think this is a good change. It was an interesting experiment, but most games work this way for a reason, I would say. And I think this is fine. As far as the amount of skills that are available being reduced from 10 to 4, that is definitely one of the biggest changes. And I think it could be very interesting. I'm excited to see what that leads to in terms of build crafting, and how it will kind of encourage you to not have just a bunch of generalist units by the end game that can do pretty much everything, if not a couple things very well. Thus leading you to be able to have like, oh, I have this wizard who is a lightning mage, period, that's it. And boy howdy, if you get in the way, well, you have a big storm coming, you know? So I'm hoping that that's what it leads to. I can't really have any more concrete thoughts beyond that, since I have not, and most of us have not, seen exactly how this is going to function in terms of day-to-day gameplay, but I'm excited for it, and I trust this team, so I don't see them really botching a change this big. So I'm excited, I guess, at the end of the day, to see what lies in store for us. The fact that you can only get skills in the order that you're meant to get them as a class levels up, that I'm a little bit disappointed to hear right off the bat. It was nice being able to go in and being like, okay, I have 3 knights, or 3 holy knights, for example. I want each one to have a different role, so I'm going to choose different skills for them to learn that will put them in different roles. This one's going to have a different weapon skill from this one, that type of thing. This one, maybe I'm going to have focusing more on pure defense with Rampart Aura and lots of defensive stats. I don't care that much if they can't do a lot of damage, whereas this one I want to be able to have doing a lot of damage. They're going to have counterattack, they're going to have strengthen. And from what we've been seeing, if I'm not just misinterpreting things, which I don't think I am, it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case anymore unless we unlock a lot of different skills at the same time, right? So if we get 4 skills at level 5, these are completely arbitrary numbers, but if we get 4 skills at level 5 and we're able to see we have, okay, strengthen and counterattack are 2 of them, and then we have Rampart Aura and like some sort of defense booster or something. Again, I don't know what skills they're going to be. You can see how you can very much pigeonhole a character into the attack stats or the defensive stats, or if you can mix and match. So something like that could be good, but I'm worried about this potentially limiting early game build crafting. But again, we have to see. I haven't really seen anything about what skills you learn when and at what pace you learn them, so it very well could not be that bad at all. But it's something that hopefully has been accounted for by the team. But again, like I said before, I trust them, so it probably has, but you know. I am also glad to hear that we have a lot of new skills that are being created to fit the new combat systems. I think that's very important, especially as I've said previously. I get the feeling that there's a number of skills that have been removed because they would kind of just be redundant or bloat in this new system. So having some things to kind of replace that and just not have the skill field be a little barren feeling, I think is very, very good. Something such as like the pincer attack skill that they've shown, that's really, really cool, and I'm glad to see that the Tactics Ogre team is taking inspiration from games that have come out since Tactics Ogre has been released and re-released, and also that like we can see how those games that were inspired by Tactics Ogre have kind of been accepted by the OG and are able to help the genre flourish. That's really, really nice. I'm hoping we see more stuff like that that's obviously inspired by other games, because that'd be really, really cool. Hearing that underperforming skills such as ninjutsu and war dances have been completely revamped and rebalanced is so nice. Because like ninjas and swordmasters are some of the coolest classes in the game, but their skills have always been rather lackluster. So now, knowing that they're actually have been looked at, rebalanced, hopefully made useful in a way that will allow you to expand your arsenal of abilities and have more customizability in your parties, have hopefully every class have its own niche and be viable. That's nice. That needed to happen. Frankly, a remake slash re-release slash update like Tactics Ogre Reborn is not doing its job properly if it doesn't make updates like this, I feel like. We've had over a decade of people absolutely tearing the 2011 release apart, testing everything, doing calculations, seeing what works, what doesn't. It's a huge amount of aggregate data that shows where improvements need to be made. So I'm glad that they're making them. Absolutely. Moving away from TP as a resource is a little odd. I did like having that kind of dual resource system where you could have MP on characters, but then also TP. But it did make things overcomplicated a bit, I would say. Just give you even more numbers that you needed to pay attention to. And for someone like me, who's a big fan of the genre, that's fine. But for people who are trying to get into the genre, and I do want more people to get into the genre, I recommend games like Tactics Ogre and Final Fantasy Tactics to new players for a reason. It's probably not a bad change, especially if it allows them to balance these skills in a way that makes them more useful overall. So I'm okay with that. I'm excited to see what finishing moves look like now, though. Like, that's going to be interesting, because those, as I mentioned in the info dump, they were huge finishing moves. Like, there was a lot of times where you would basically just be working on building up your TP so that you could nuke down the really big targets on the map. And there's nothing wrong with that as a gameplay loop, but it definitely tended to a more turtle-y strategy, I would say. Now with these abilities being just skills like anything else, it might keep things a little bit more dynamic and keep you on your toes a little bit more. Charms having more effects than just granting XP and levels is nice as well. Like, I did like the idea of them being a system that was just bonus XP. I'm a big fan of Fire Emblem games that have bonus XP, things like that, where you can apply it to flagging units that you want to be higher level, but you don't feel like necessarily grinding, or they maybe are really hard to grind at lower levels. So just having that as a system, I think is good. Now knowing that it's also kind of a replacement for the tarot system, I think is great. That's one aspect of Tactics Ogre, Let Us Cling Together on the PSP that I could just never get into. The min-maxing of being like, okay, oh, what card dropped from this random guy that I killed? Oh, it's going to give luck up, or loyalty up, or strength up, or whatever. Do I have a unit that would be relevant for? Where are they on the battlefield? What is it going to take for me to get them to the card so that they can pick it up? I have to navigate my other units around it, keep the enemy from picking it up. Like, oh my god. And it's not something you needed to do, but once you knew how the system worked and what changes the different cards would provide, it always felt to me like you were now playing suboptimally. You had the knowledge, and you had a path to increased power in front of you. You didn't really need it, and you really didn't feel like going out of your way to utilize it. It would still leave a kind of sour taste in my mouth if I would finish a map and not maximize my potential with tarot cards. So now, with charms being your source of stat increases, as well as things like elemental changes and experience and things like that, I think it's going to take a lot of that pain away, because now you can take your time, you don't have to spend time navigating units around, whatever, and say, okay, who wants these items? Who do I want to give these items to? How can I weave this into my build crafting? That's awesome. And then also still having tarot cards as buff cards, and having that be a temporary, just for that battle buff, I think is very, very interesting. It will absolutely affect the flow of battle. It's going to encourage you to actually move your units around, deny them to the enemy, make sure the enemy doesn't deny them from you, all that type of stuff. I feel like this is a much better way of utilizing what was, I do think, a very unique and interesting system from the previous release. This is just the refinement that it needed. So I like this a lot. I'm excited to see how this affects the gameplay. Being able to scout the battlefield. I don't really know that I need to say much more about this. I already said that I'm hoping that this is a system that comes to other games that are being remade, such as presumably Final Fantasy Tactics. I mean, that's pretty much it. There's really no reason in this day and age, with modern technology and improvements to game design, that players shouldn't be able to scout the battlefield, unless there's like a specific scenario that you're going into where maybe you've been ambushed and like you want to provide this feeling of you don't have time to set up, you gotta just wing it. That, I think, is its own specific scenario case. As a general rule, being able to see the battlefield, being able to plan ahead, being able to modify your party, you have saving and loading. People are just going to reload if they're in a poor situation or they want to optimize, and this just saves people time. So, absolutely should be a thing. No complaints whatsoever. Being able to save multiple parties as well, very, very cool. I like that a lot. And I think that's going to help people like me who kind of get stuck wanting to use way too many units instead of focusing down to like one narrow party. A little bit easier of a time doing that. Because now you can actually set up specific parties with different characters and different strategies and just say, oh, it looks like this battle will be a good opportunity for me to use my Oops All Casters team or whatever. So that's really, really nice. You can just have it set up and go. Having bonus objectives, I think, is another really cool way to encourage build crafting and to encourage people to try different strategies and approach battles in different ways, keep things fresh. It reminds me almost of, and I know this is going to be a deep cut for a lot of people, but of the series Super Robot Wars, which is another turn-based strategy RPG, focusing around various different giant mecha series, kind of the Fire Emblem of giant mechs in a way. And for a long time, there were bonus objectives in that series that would get you points. And by getting as many points as possible, you could actually unlock secret units, get the golden ending to the game, unlock a wholly new route or path or story beat. Very, very cool. And it oftentimes required you to think outside the box and how you were going to approach a fight. So seeing something like that in Tactics Ogre, I think that'll help keep later battles and especially repeated playthroughs from getting quite as stale as they could be in the past. Hearing that the improved AI is actually going to be able to recognize things like choke points and buff cards and things like that is good. Frankly, it's what I would have expected anyway. I kind of already thought the AI would recognize choke points in Let Us Cling Together. I guess maybe it didn't, but that seems kind of weird to me. I don't really have a whole lot to say beyond improvements to AI, good. Especially if it can apply to your own units as well. If you have allied units that hopefully aren't going to get themselves killed quite as much, or you're trying to do auto battle stuff, improvements to the AI that's just good. Period. Done. Now for the minor changes, going to just rattle through here really quick because we've been going long enough as it is. Thank you for sticking around. If you have, by the way, thank you so much. So, trajectory being a skill that you can just toggle on for any ranged unit. I think that's fine. Like, it was a decision to use that as a skill if you needed it in the past, but I mean, just make it toggleable. Have it available. It's really just a convenience thing. Just give it to people. It's fine. Characters immediately taking their turn after getting back up is interesting. And honestly, I think this is one of the changes that I don't really like. Like, if you've lost a unit in battle, you've made some sort of tactical error in some way. And I don't think it should be too easy to recover from that, really. And knowing that you can revive a character and they'll just immediately be able to move out of danger, there's still going to be scenarios where that's maybe still a dangerous situation to be in, but it's going to take a lot of the pressure off. And I don't think that's good. I think if you're going to take a difficult, in-depth, serious strategy game and treat it with the respect that it deserves, the player should be punished for losing characters. Not permanently, maybe. Maybe you don't want to have like a Fire Emblem permadeath scenario, but Yeah, we'll have to see how this one plays out. Off the cuff, I'm not a huge fan of it, but, I mean, at the end of the day, it could also just be one of those, this is a convenience thing. People are just going to reload if they lose too many units or whatever anyway. With the tarot system where you can rewind turns, oftentimes people just rewind to the point before where they would have lost a unit anyway, so it could be fine, but just off the cuff, it feels a little weird to me. Now, random encounters having been removed is something that I saw a number of people actually calling a bad change. But that's one that I don't disagree with, because at the end of the day, just being able to know where you can go to get your random battles, quote-unquote, and train is good. Because it was always annoying, like, if you were trying to get somewhere and would get stuck in a random battle that you didn't want to be stuck in, that was annoying. And then when you were trying to grind and you'd be running back and forward over the 3 places you wanted to grind for potentially like 50 moves and one just wouldn't trigger was also annoying and a waste of time. So better, I think, to still have that function exist in the form of training battles and just being able to engage in it when and where you want. It'll save you time. It'll save you headaches, both when you want to find them and when you don't want to find them. And I think it will just make the gameplay experience a bit smoother. Units not being able to die in those battles, by the way, I think that's fine. Again, if you're there training, you're probably just going to reload if a character that you're trying to level up dies anyway, so, like, it's fine. That's whatever. The general balance changes, I mean, that's good. Obviously needed to happen with all the changes happening to the way that mechanically the game functions. Don't really have anything to say beyond that. The party level system, I think, is interesting. I've seen some people kind of disparaging that as a bad system as well, like not being able to overlevel if you don't choose, but I respect the creators saying, no, this is the level that you're supposed to be at this point. We give you some wiggle room so that you still have some agency, but we want the game to be a challenge. We didn't make the game just for you to steamroll it. Please engage with the game the way it's meant to be engaged with. I've always been a big fan of that. I'm not a fan of trying to break games. I know a lot of people enjoy that, but that's not me. I don't like doing that. I like experiencing what was meant to be experienced, so I'm all on board with that change. Finally, the rogue class being removed from player use, now being an enemy-only class. It's a weird change. I gotta be honest, I didn't really play with rogues much in my time with Let Us Cling Together, so I don't have a vested interest in them. I don't even really remember too much what they did. I think you could steal stuff with them and everything, but, like, it seems fine. Don't really have a whole lot to say beyond that. It's just kind of weird. Like, I don't really know why to take it away, but I don't really think it's a problem either. Now, the changes to the shop, great. Menuing is a pain. There are people who like it. I'm fine with it. I enjoy it, but, like, people are playing the game to play the game, not to be navigating shop menus for 20 minutes, so smoothing that process out, I think, is good across the board. Don't really see how it could even be construed as bad, to be frank. And then, of course, as I already stated, the crafting system being redone. Thank God. There's really not a whole lot else I can say about that. It was terrible before. I've stated in multiple videos that I like it conceptually. I like the idea of being able to hold on to gear for a while, not just immediately tossing it as soon as the new hotness shows up, being able to upgrade it. That's all fine. But God, the way it was implemented before was terrible. So now, much, much better spot. This is what it always should have been, just from what we've heard about it. Haven't even had hands-on with it, and I know this is infinitely better than it was before. Cool, good, great, happy. Thank you, Mr. Matsuno, for this change. And that's it. As long as more sudden new info drops don't come out in the next week before the game releases, that is your ultimate new information guide to all the new information that's been put out mechanically about Tactics Ogre. There's been a lot of other stuff, such as going over the different classes and what they do, talking about the different characters, the gods, which is very, very, very interesting to me, and I kind of want to do a lore video about the gods themselves, because that's cool content right there, and stuff I think is largely new in a lot of ways. But as far as the game is concerned and game mechanics are concerned, the things that the people are most concerned about, that's it. If there's any extremely pressing, pertinent information to come out with a new video about before the game releases, I will, but I don't really think there will be. We're very close to release. And I wanted to take a second to go over what my plans are for that release. My plan right now is I'm going to be streaming almost every day during the week, possibly one day during the weekend, as often as I can and for as long as I can. I'm thinking 3 to 4 hours a day in the evenings, playing the game. I don't think I'm going to do an actual Let's Play of it because it's a long game. But streams is a good way to kind of get through a lot of content, show people the game, talk with you about it in chat, and maybe get some audience participation going on and some particular choices that happen. We'll see. And then my video content is going to be largely guides and informational, much like these videos have been. How to level, how to build characters, how to approach particularly problematic stages or scenarios that you might run into, things like that, battle tactics. And I think that'll be a good way for people who haven't played the game before and want to get into it for the first time to get into it and have some guidance, because these games can be tough, even with all of the changes that have been made to this release. So that's my plan going forward. Thank you all so much for watching. I do very much appreciate it. If you want to make sure that you're seeing all of that content and all of my content, such as this update video, please do make sure that you are subscribed. I'm trying to push to 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year. We're getting close to the end, so any help that I can get with that would be greatly appreciated. If you're feeling particularly generous, I do have a Patreon and YouTube memberships, lots of benefits there, including early access to videos and scripts and things like that. So if you really want to support me and show that you appreciate what I do, look into that stuff. Links are all in the description, along with my Discord, which is also a really, really nice place. Have a lot of good discussions, very respectable, very respectful, very nice community and people. So if you look into all that stuff, that would be great. Again, my name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other. Bye now.